Well, hello and welcome. This is our week of prayer. Over the next 6 days, so that's Monday through to Saturday, we're going to be looking at a specific group of things and we're going to be praying for them. Now, we know that not everybody's able to make it from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock on an evening. Some of that's because actually it's difficult to get out of the house at those times. For others, it might just be that because of already existing commitments that you can't get, but you would still like to join us in prayer. So the purpose of these videos is to give you a gist as to what's going to be happening every day and how you can get involved and pray for it even though you're not actually meeting in-house at the same time. So, I'm going to tell you the 6 things that we're going to be praying for, and then I'm going to come back and actually look at what I'm going to be asking you to pray for this evening. So the first one is, tonight we're going to be looking at celebration. So tonight being Monday night, we're going to be praying for celebration. We're going to be looking at a whole various different system of things that we're grateful for, and we're just going to come with this sense of gratitude and actually just coming to God for that. Tomorrow, so that's Tuesday evening, we're going to be looking at growth. And we're not looking specifically at numerical growth, but we're actually going to be looking at how do we as believers, the believers of Four Oaks Baptist Church, how do we grow? And so we're going to be looking at, for example, some of the infrastructures we've already got in place. For example, things like Alpha, things like house groups and the likes, and actually looking at how do we, and praying into the growth of our own believers within the church. You see, because God didn't just tell us to go out and make converts, but he calls us to go out and to make disciples, and then commands them to teach these disciples all that they have been taught. So we're going to be looking at growth. On Wednesday, we're going to be looking at our kids' work. We're going to be looking at the direction to which our children's work is going to be moving once we hit September. And again, there'll be prayer points to look at that. Once we then move on to that, then we're going to be looking at evangelism. How do we currently do evangelism? Yes, the coffee shop is one part of that, but we're going to be looking at actually what that looks like in other areas, and how can we get better at evangelism, and how can we help grow the kingdom of God both locally and further afield. On Friday evening, we're going to be looking at our various different charities. So we're going to be praying specifically for Kids Club Kampala over in Uganda. We're going to be looking for Kids UK and praying for Andy Markham and his team locally. So this is looking at our charities both local and overseas. But we're also going to be praying for some of our other missionary partners as well on that day too. Finally, on Saturday, we're going to be praying for the future of our church. What is God calling us to? What will that look like? If we're going to continue to grow, we need to begin to think about actually what's going to happen with our building, what's going to happen with those that are already worshiping with us. And we need to begin to, there's loads of great ideas from, for example, church plans, to building projects, to multiple services, loads of ideas. And although they're all great ideas, we actually want to be able to walk with wisdom into the next chapter. So we're calling you as the church to pray into our future. So those are our 6 subjects that we're going to be looking at over this next week. So if you're going to be joining us tonight, here are the things that we're going to be doing as part of this. So first of all, we're going to start with a time of worship. Our 2 chosen songs for this evening are going to be "Oh Praise the Name" and "Here I Am to Worship." So if you want to take a moment to cue those on YouTube, so that's "Oh Praise the Name," choose any of the variants that you want, there's loads of options out there, and choose "Here I Am to Worship." These are going to be something that we're going to do as a group together. We're going to worship, we're going to just remind ourselves of how great God is, because we're coming to him with gratitude, thankfulness, and as an element of celebrating the things that God has done for us. We're then going to be moving into our past. I mean, our church was birthed in the 1740s. And so just giving thanks to God for all the wonderful things that he has done. And we hear of so many churches that are closing their doors because there's just lack of attendance. Whereas for us as a church, we're actually seeing quite the opposite. So we're going to be taking a moment and just saying to God, thank you for all the things that you've been doing over the past few hundred years. If it's helpful to you at this moment just to press pause and to pray for that, then this is your moment to pause. The next thing we're going to do is give thanks to all of the people who have just recently become Christians. Particularly in the last few years, we've just seen a whole series of people become Christians, to the point that I would probably say over half of our church have become Christians in the last 5 to 6 years. Like, that is amazing. When I talk to many of my colleagues, they want to know what has happened. Like, why is that the case? Because actually that's something that they're not seeing. Now, this is something to be able to rejoice in. Did you know that in the last 6 years we've had 15 baptisms? 15. That's something to be excited for. So again, maybe now's the time to pause and just thank God for the salvations, for those who have come to know Jesus, some who have happened to find God on their own and stumbled into our church, some who have responded points on their journey to a gospel message within, and they then have gone through the waters of baptism and shared their journey with us. So maybe now's the time to pray for that. The next thing we're going to be praying for is praying for our children. You see, when I first started, there wasn't a single child in our congregation. And there was that moment of us looking and longing for children. And then one by one, families began to come. And so this is something to rejoice in. And I often say that when we hear children making noise in our congregation, we can't tut or roll our eyes, because actually I'd much rather be in a church that's family oriented and that's got kids in it than to be in a church that's quiet, that's still, and it's got none. So now's maybe a chance just to pause and just take a moment and actually just thank God for the fact that we've got children in our midst, and that these children are growing up knowing and learning about their Creator, who is longing to have a relationship with them. That these kids are growing up with Christ as part of their foundation. So let's press pause, take a moment and pray for that. As we're thanking God for one end of the spectrum, also I just want to take a moment and thank God for the other end of our spectrum. What I find interesting is that we seem to be finding that we're not specifically a young church. That's still coming in through the doors of our church are people who are retired. Some recently retiring, others who've been retired for a long time, and who are actually finding that despite the fact that our music is vibrant, loud, and quite modern, that actually they can find this to be a place that they can call home. And so we want to take a moment and actually just thank God for the wealth of knowledge and wisdom that comes from those who are more senior in our years. That this is not a church that is just full of young people, but actually this is a church that is full of those who are older. If you were with us just a couple of weeks ago, we were taking a look at Luke's Gospel, and more specifically just the presentation of Jesus at the temple. And it wasn't two young whippersnappers that came up to prophesy over Jesus and Mary, but it was two who were very senior in years. So we want to rejoice for our older members as much as we rejoice for our younger ones. So now's a moment just to press pause for that. When I started, I remember setting up over actually on the side of the church a series of microphones and a PA system and all of this stuff that would suggest if you walked in that we had a full worship band, when actually worship at that point was literally just myself playing guitar. Occasionally I could talk Jim into playing bass with me, and bit by bit Louise began. And with the faithfulness of being able to get the likes of Janice and Jeremy to play along with me on the piano from time to time as well. But we were a church that had no worship team. Now worship is very much a focal point of us. And I remember asking God to bring in musicians and to raise up worship leaders. And I remember asking at the time a couple of just really godly women in church and said, hey, listen, I've set up that over there. It's almost like a prophetic statement. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had young people in the band leading our worship? Well, you fast forward and it's rare now to have a service when it's not almost a full band, drums included. Can you believe we've got drums in church now too? So let's take a moment just to thank God for the worship of our church. And I kind of think looking forwards as well, this is a part of the celebration, it's like I want us to get to a point where as a church that we are writing our own worship songs that are coming out of our own place where we are as a church, and that we're moving forwards. And I think that as we begin to thank God for what he's doing, actually there's something about thanking God for what he's yet to do as well. So now's a moment just to press pause on that. The next thing that we're going to be praying for is that we're going to be praying for our team. So again, when I started, that there wasn't loads of stuff going on in church because there wasn't many of us in church. And now as churches began to grow, that we're now at a point where actually realistically, if everybody turned up, we're probably just over 100 people. That's exciting. But part of that is actually we're praying and thanking God for the members of our teams. So whether that's the welcome team, whether that's our tech team, worship team, admin, our church secretary, a treasurer, like this is, we couldn't do it if it wasn't for those who were actually putting in time and effort outside of their own work hours to be able to do that. And so actually we want to take a moment and actually just thank God for that. Yes, we need more team. Yes, we need more worshippers. Yes, we need more pensioners. Yes, we need more growth. Yes, we need more salvations. Yes, we need more baptisms. But the reality is that actually we just want to say thank you to God for bringing those people and thank God for them. So let's press pause. Take a moment to do just that. And finally, the last thing that we're going to be praying for is, and thanking God for, is our coffee shop. When I started, we did coffee mornings, which was very much a tea bag in a mug style of thing, an instant coffee. And I know that for some people, like that's your bag. However, because of a whole series of stuff that happened, like we were doing evening services at a local coffee shop that's now no longer there. We then moved to Costa Coffee and we were doing evening services there. But then suddenly they hiked the price upon us and we just couldn't afford it. And we ended up having this long conversation and saying, what would it look like if we transformed our foyer into a swanky coffee shop? And it was a really way out thing back then. But we took a leap of faith. And because of that coffee shop, we have seen so many people who have walked through the doors seeking coffee and who have found Jesus. Because our heart and our desire is to create community where Jesus is at the center. So the inevitability is you enter our community, surprise, surprise, you're going to find Jesus. So I want you to take a moment just to thank God for the ministry of our coffee shop and thank God for those who have come to faith through this. And I can give you a long list of people who have, because of that initial contact with the coffee shop, who have then found Jesus and then found themselves in the baptism tank. Like, this is a wonderful ministry and we don't want to take it for granted, and we want to keep thanking God for it. So now is a chance to be able to pause and thank God for that. And that brings us to the end of the points for this evening's prayer. I want to encourage you tomorrow to join us as we begin to pull apart our points on growth. Thanks for taking time to join us on this. But I want to encourage you just to finish by praying. This is a chance for you to thank God for all the things that he has done specifically in your life. You see, that's what makes this prayer so different, is that the things that you're praying for will be different for the things that I'm praying for. And all the others who are logging in online to join us on this will also be praying for different things, just as much as later on, 8 o'clock this evening, that those in-house will also be thanking God for. And that is the end of session 1 of our week of prayer. Thanks, guys.